A billionaire walked into a luxury restaurant and mocked a black waitress by asking her for financial advice as a joke. But when she answered, the entire table went silent. What happened next didn't just change his perspective, it changed his life, and the lives of thousands of people he had never even met. Rain tapped steadily against the glass windows of Larkspur, one of Chicago's most exclusive restaurants. Inside, everything shimmered: crystal glasses, polished marble floors, and the quiet confidence of people who never had to worry about the cost of anything. But in the middle of that polished world was someone who didn't belong, at least, not on paper. Alicia Carter adjusted the strap of her apron as she stepped into the dining area, balancing a tray with practiced precision. Her movements were smooth, almost invisible, like she had mastered the art of existing without taking up space. Because in places like this, she had learned, that was survival. "Table 7 needs refills," her manager whispered sharply as she passed. "Got it," Alicia replied calmly, already moving. At 32, Alicia's life had become a constant rhythm of responsibility. Wake up before sunrise. Check on her younger brother, Marcus. Make sure he had breakfast. Head to her morning shift at a small cafe. Then rush here, a Larkspur, for the evening shift that paid just enough to keep the lights on. And still, it was never quite enough. But if you looked closely, really closely, you would notice something different about Alicia. It was in the way she spoke. Measured. Thoughtful. Intentional. It was in the way she observed people, not with envy, but with analysis. Because Alicia Carter wasn't just a waitress. She was a mind that had been forced to pause. Years ago, she had been one of the top students in her finance program. Professors had praised her. Classmates had admired her. She had a future that felt inevitable. Until life interrupted. Her mother's illness came suddenly. Aggressive. Expensive. Hospital bills stacked up faster than hope. Alicia had made a choice, one that didn't feel like a choice at all. She dropped out. Took on 2 jobs. And told herself it was temporary. But temporary turned into years. And then, her mother was gone. Now, every decision Alicia made revolved around one thing: making sure her younger brother never had to go through what she did. "Hey, Alicia," one of her co-workers, Jenna, called out. "You ever think about leaving this place?" Alicia smiled faintly. "Every day." "So why don't you?" She paused for a moment. "Because right now, this is what stability looks like." But what Alicia didn't say out loud was that she still studied. Late at night, after Marcus fell asleep, she would sit at their small kitchen table with old textbooks, free online courses, and handwritten notes. She hadn't given up. She had just adapted. Across the room, a very different life was unfolding. Victor Hale sat at a long table surrounded by men in tailored suits, their voices low but confident, their laughter controlled and strategic. Victor didn't laugh. At 55, he had built his name into something powerful. His company dominated the tech logistics space. His decisions influenced markets. His presence commanded respect. But tonight, he was bored. And with the new expansion model, we're projecting a 20% increase. Victor checked his watch. Predictable. We believe this partnership could be mutually beneficial. He glanced at the window. Repetitive. It's a win-win situation. Victor leaned back slightly. Empty. He had heard it all before. Different faces. Same conversations. Money chasing more money. He wasn't impressed. He wasn't challenged. And somewhere deep down, he wasn't fulfilled. Then something shifted. Not in the conversation, but in the room. Alicia approached the table, placing drinks down with quiet precision. Victor's eyes flickered toward her. There was something different. Not her uniform. Not her posture. But her presence. She wasn't intimidated. She wasn't overly eager. She was simply composed. Victor watched as she interacted briefly with one of the men at the table, polite, but not submissive. Interesting. When she turned to leave, something impulsive sparked in him. A break from the monotony. A moment of entertainment. Wait. Alicia paused and turned back. Yes, sir. Victor tilted his head slightly, a faint smirk forming. You seem like you have your head on your shoulders. A few men at the table exchanged amused glances. Here we go. Victor continued, casually. If you had my money, what would you do with it? A couple of the investors chuckled. It was harmless. Playful. A joke. At least, that's what it was supposed to be. Alicia didn't respond immediately. For a brief moment, the noise of the restaurant seemed to fade. Her eyes met his. And in that instant, something shifted. Not in the room, but in him. Because there was no offense in her expression. No hesitation. Just thought. Then she spoke. Calm. Clear. Unshaken. I'd make sure it outlives me. Silence. The laughter stopped. Victor's smirk disappeared. The words weren't loud. But they landed. Heavy. Unexpected. Unavoidable. And just like that, the joke wasn't funny anymore. Victor leaned forward slightly, studying her. What does that mean? He asked, this time without humor. Alicia adjusted her grip on the tray. It means wealth shouldn't end with the person who earns it, she said simply. It should create opportunities that keep going, long after you're gone. No one at the table spoke. Victor's interest sharpened. Because for the first time that night, something was different. Something wasn't predictable. And something felt real. The silence at the table lingered longer than anyone expected. Victor Hale leaned back slowly, his fingers tapping once against the edge of the table, not out of impatience this time, but curiosity. He studied Alicia like she had just disrupted a pattern he didn't even realize he was trapped in. And how exactly, Victor said, his tone now measured, would you do that? Alicia didn't flinch. She had been underestimated before. Many times. But something about this moment felt different. Maybe it was the way he was looking at her now, not amused, not dismissive, but attentive. Still, she chose her words carefully. By investing in people, she said. Not just companies. One of the men at the table scoffed lightly. That's a nice idea, but not very scalable. Alicia turned her gaze toward him, not confrontational, just steady. "It is," she replied. "If you do it right." Victor's lips pressed together slightly, intrigued. "Go on." Alicia shifted the tray in her hands, but her voice remained calm. "Most people think wealth grows through accumulation," she said. "But it actually grows faster through access. You give the right people access to opportunity, education, capital, mentorship, and they multiply that value in ways no single investment can." The table had gone completely quiet now. Even the skeptic leaned back, listening. Victor tilted his head. "And how would you identify the right people?" Alicia answered without hesitation. "The ones who've had to fight for everything." That hit something. Not just in the room, but in Victor. Because for a brief moment, he remembered. Not the billionaire. Not the empire. But the younger version of himself, the one who had nothing, who had clawed his way up through risk and grit. He hadn't thought about that version of himself in years. Alicia continued, her voice soft but firm. "People who understand scarcity don't waste opportunity," she said. "They build with it." Victor exhaled slowly. For the first time in a very long time. He wasn't the smartest person at the table. And oddly enough, he didn't mind. A few minutes later, Alicia stepped away, continuing her shift like nothing had happened. But everything had changed. Victor barely heard the rest of the meeting. Numbers were discussed. Deals were proposed. Hands were shaken. But his mind kept returning to one thing. "I'd make sure it outlives me." 3 days later, Victor came back. Not for a meeting. Not for investors. For her. "Table 12, the hostess asked. Victor nodded. "And I'd like Alicia as my server." When Alicia saw his name on the reservation, she paused for half a second. Then she exhaled. "Stay professional." That was the rule. Always. She approached the table with the same calm composure. "Good evening," she said. "Welcome back." Victor looked up. This time, there was no smirk. "Good evening, Alicia." He remembered her name. That alone was unusual. "Can I start you with something to drink?" she asked. "Coffee," he said. "And the conversation, if you don't mind." Alicia raised an eyebrow slightly, but nodded. "I'll bring your coffee." When she returned, Victor didn't waste time. "Sit for a moment," he said, gesturing to the empty chair across from him. Alicia hesitated. "We're not supposed to." "I'll speak to your manager," he said calmly. It wasn't a demand. It was a promise. After a brief pause, she sat down. Not comfortably. Not casually. But confidently. Victor leaned forward. "I've been thinking about what you said," he began. Alicia folded her hands lightly. "And? I think you're either very insightful," he said, "or very bold." Alicia gave a small smile. "Sometimes those are the same thing." Victor almost smiled back. "Almost. Where did you learn all that?" he asked. Alicia's expression shifted slightly, not guarded, but thoughtful. "I studied finance," she said. A long time ago. And now you're here. It wasn't judgment. It was observation. Life happens, she replied simply. Victor studied her for a moment. There was no bitterness in her tone. No resentment. Just acceptance. That was rare. Do you still study? He asked. Alicia nodded. Every day. That answer caught him off guard. Even now? Especially now. Victor leaned back. There it was again. That difference. That quiet determination. You're wasting your potential here, he said. Alicia met his gaze directly. No, she said. I'm surviving here. That hit harder than he expected. Victor reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card. He placed it on the table between them. Come to my office tomorrow, he said. 10 a.m. Alicia looked at the card, but didn't touch it. And do what? She asked. Talk, Victor said. Show me what you know. Alicia's eyes narrowed slightly, not in suspicion, but in caution. I don't need charity, she said quietly. Victor shook his head. This isn't charity. He paused. It's curiosity. Alicia considered that. Longer than he expected. Because for her, opportunities like this didn't come without strings. They came with expectations. With risks. With the possibility of disappointment. Why me? She asked. Victor didn't answer immediately. Because the truth was, he didn't fully know. But he said the only thing that felt honest. Because you made me think, he said. And that doesn't happen often. Alicia looked at the card again. Then slowly, she picked it up. I'll think about it, she said. Victor nodded. That's all I ask. The next morning, Alicia stood outside a towering glass building downtown. Victor Hale's company headquarters. She checked the time. 9:58 a.m. Her heart was steady. But her mind was racing. What if this is a mistake? What if this changes everything? She thought about Marcus. About the bills. About the life she was trying to build. Then she took a deep breath. And walked inside. Upstairs, Victor stood by the window, watching the city move below. For the first time in years, he felt something unfamiliar. Anticipation. Not for a deal. Not for profit. But for a person. Alicia Carter. The waitress who refused to be invisible. Before we continue with this incredible journey, I spent countless hours researching and crafting this story to bring you something truly meaningful. If stories like this touch your heart and you want to see more acts of kindness that restore faith in humanity, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. It means the world to me and helps these important stories reach others who need to hear them. Now, let's see what happens next. Have you ever witnessed an act of kindness that completely changed your perspective? Share your story in the comments below. The elevator ride felt longer than it actually was. Alicia stood quietly, her reflection staring back at her from the polished steel walls. Her uniform was simple. Her shoes slightly worn. Her posture, steady. She didn't try to look like she belonged. She just refused to feel like she didn't. When the doors opened, a receptionist greeted her with a polite but curious smile. "Can I help you?" "I'm here to see Victor Hale," Alicia said calmly. There was a brief pause, just enough to signal surprise. But then the receptionist checked the system, and her expression changed. "Of course. He's expecting you." Moments later, Alicia stepped into a spacious office overlooking the city. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Minimalist furniture. Everything clean. Controlled. Intentional. Victor stood near the window, turning as she entered. "You came," he said. Alicia nodded. "I said I'd think about it." "And?" "I'm here." Victor gestured to a chair. "Good. Let's begin." What started as a conversation quickly became something else. Victor handed her a tablet. "Hypothetical scenario," he said. "You have $10 million to invest. No restrictions. What do you do?" Alicia didn't rush. She read. Analyzed. Then she began. "First, I wouldn't treat it as 10 million, she said. I'd treat it as leverage." Victor watched closely. "How?" "I'd split it into tiers," Alicia continued. 40% into low-risk, stable returns to preserve capital. 30% into scalable businesses, preferably underserved markets with high growth potential. And the remaining 30%. She paused. Victor leaned in slightly. "Yes? I'd invest directly into people." Victor's eyebrow lifted. "Define that." "Microloans. Community-based startups. Education sponsorships tied to mentorship programs," she said. "Not handouts. Structured opportunities." Victor crossed his arms. "And the return?" Alicia met his gaze. "Long-term exponential growth," she said. "Not just financially, but socially. Which eventually circles back to financial anyway." Silence. Then Victor gave a slow nod. "Interesting." That day turned into hours. Hours turned into multiple meetings. And before either of them fully realized it, a routine had formed. Alicia would work her shifts, then come to Victor's office on her days off. Sometimes exhausted, sometimes running on little sleep, but always prepared, always sharp. Victor began assigning her real-world case studies. Failed investments. Struggling companies. And Alicia saw what others didn't. Patterns. People. Potential. "She's good," one of Victor's senior analysts admitted reluctantly after reviewing her insights. Victor didn't respond. He already knew. But something else was happening, too. Something neither of them had planned. Victor was changing. He started asking different questions in meetings. Less about profit margins. More about impact. "Who benefits from this?" he asked during one boardroom discussion. The room went quiet. That wasn't his usual style. Meanwhile, Alicia's world remained grounded in reality. Bills still came. Her brother still needed her. And Larkspur still expected her to show up, on time, every time. "You've been distracted lately," her manager said one evening. "Just tired," Alicia replied. "Make sure it doesn't affect your performance." Alicia nodded. But the truth was, her life was pulling her in two directions. One rooted in survival. The other, in possibility. At home, Marcus noticed the change. "You've been smiling more," he said one night. Alicia laughed softly. "Have I?" "Yeah," he said. "It's weird." She nudged him playfully. "Get used to it." But later that night, as she sat with her notes spread across the table, her smile faded. Because hope can be just as scary as struggle. The shift came unexpectedly. Victor called Alicia into his office one afternoon. His expression was different. More serious. "We need to talk," he said. Alicia felt it immediately. Something was wrong. "What is it?" Victor exhaled slowly. "The board knows about you." Alicia's stomach tightened. "And?" "They're not supportive." She let out a small, controlled breath. "I figured." Victor leaned forward. "They think it's a liability," he continued. "An untrained outsider influencing business decisions." Alicia nodded. "That's not surprising." "But they're pushing back," Victor said. "Hard." "And what does that mean?" Alicia asked. Victor hesitated. It wasn't a question he liked answering. "It means they want me to stop this," he said. Silence filled the room. Alicia looked down briefly. Then back up. "Then you should," she said. Victor frowned slightly. "You don't mean that." Alicia's voice remained calm. "I do," she said. "You have a company to run. A reputation to maintain. And you have talent that deserves more than this," Victor replied. Alicia shook her head. "This was never supposed to be permanent," she said. "It was an opportunity. And I'm grateful for it." Grateful. That word didn't sit right with Victor. Because to him, this wasn't charity. This was potential. Being limited. The pressure from the board intensified. Emails. Calls. Private meetings. "You're risking the company's credibility," one board member warned. "All for what?" another added. "A waitress with opinions." Victor remained silent during those conversations. But inside, something was shifting. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking like a CEO. He was thinking like a man who had just been reminded of who he used to be. Meanwhile, Alicia began pulling back. Fewer visits. Shorter conversations. More distance. Not because she wanted to, but because she had learned something long ago. Don't get too comfortable in spaces that can disappear overnight. One evening, Victor returned to Larkspur. Alicia was there. Of course she was. "Coffee?" she asked, as if nothing had changed. Victor looked at her for a moment. "Why are you stepping back?" he asked. Alicia set the cup down gently. "Because I know how this ends," she said. "And how does it end?" She met his eyes. With me going back to my life, she said. And you going back to yours? Victor leaned forward. What if I don't want that? Alicia's expression softened slightly. But it's not just your decision, she said. Is it? That hit the truth. Directly. For the first time since this began. There was doubt. Not in Alicia. But in the situation. In the system. In whether something this unlikely could actually last. Have you ever had to overcome obstacles to help someone you cared about? What challenges did you face? Share your experience below. Victor Hale had built his entire life on control. Control over outcomes. Control over risk. Control over people. But now, for the first time in decades, he was facing something he couldn't neatly calculate. Alicia Carter was stepping away. And worse, he understood why. That night, Victor sat alone in his office long after the city lights dimmed. The board's words echoed in his mind. A liability. Bad optics. Unqualified. He had heard similar things once, years ago, when he was just starting out. Too young. Too inexperienced. Too risky. Back then, someone had taken a chance on him. Not because it was safe, but because it was right. Victor stood up slowly, his reflection staring back at him from the darkened glass. For years, he had told himself success meant never looking back. But now he realized something deeper. Success without purpose was just accumulation. And Alicia had been right all along. Wealth should outlive you. The next morning, Victor walked into the boardroom. The tension was immediate. We need a decision, one of the board members said. This situation with the waitress. Her name is Alicia Carter, Victor interrupted calmly. A brief silence followed. And she's not the problem, he continued. The problem is how limited our thinking has become. A few members exchanged looks. This isn't about feelings, another said. It's about business. Victor nodded. Exactly. He tapped a remote, and a presentation lit up the screen. Charts. Data. Projections. But this wasn't the usual kind. This, Victor said, is what happens when you invest in underserved markets. The numbers spoke clearly. Untapped potential. Higher long-term returns. Stronger community stability. I didn't create this model, Victor continued. She did. That changed the room. You're basing strategy on her ideas, someone asked, disbelief in their voice. I'm basing strategy on results, Victor replied. He paused. Then delivered the decision that would change everything. I'm launching a pilot program, he said. Independently, if necessary. And if the board doesn't approve, someone challenged. Victor didn't hesitate. Then I'll fund it myself. Silence. Because they all knew. He could. That same afternoon, Victor went to Larkspur. Not as a customer. But with purpose. Alicia was mid-shift when she saw him. Her expression tightened slightly. Victor, I'm working. I know, he said. But this can't wait. She hesitated. Then stepped aside with him. What is it? Victor looked at her, not as a billionaire, not as a mentor, but as someone asking for trust. I'm moving forward, he said. With what? The program, he replied. The one you described. Alicia blinked. You're serious? I was always serious, he said. She searched his face. And you're bored. They'll come around, Victor said. Or they won't. Alicia let out a slow breath. That's a big risk. Victor gave a faint, almost unfamiliar smile. So was asking a waitress for financial advice. For the first time. Alicia smiled back. The program started small. Very small. A single office. A handful of applicants. Limited funding. But it was intentional. Alicia insisted on that. No shortcuts, she told Victor. If we're doing this, we do it right. She helped design every detail. Selection criteria. Mentorship structures. Financial literacy training. And most importantly, accountability systems. These aren't handouts, Alicia said during one meeting. They're opportunities. And we treat them that way. Victor watched her lead with confidence. The same woman who once carried trays quietly through a restaurant was now guiding a vision that could change lives. The first group included a single mother trying to expand her home bakery, a young man with a mobile car repair idea, two sisters launching a small clothing brand, people who had ideas, but no access. And as Alicia had predicted, they didn't waste the opportunity. Within months, results started showing. Small wins at first. Then bigger ones. Revenue growth. Job creation. Community impact. Victor reviewed the reports one evening and leaned back in his chair. For the first time in years, he felt something deeper than success. He felt fulfilled. Meanwhile, Alicia's life was changing too. Not overnight. Not magically. But steadily. She reduced her shifts at Larkspur. Started earning a consulting role within the program. And most importantly, she allowed herself to believe in something more. You're different, Marcus told her one night. Alicia smiled. Better or worse? Better, he said. Way better. 1 year later. Larkspur was just as elegant as ever. The same polished floors. The same quiet luxury. But something had changed. At a table near the window sat Alicia Carter. Not in a uniform, but in a tailored suit. Confident. Composed. Unshaken. Across from her sat a group of young entrepreneurs. Nervous. Hopeful. Just like she once was. One of them, a young woman, hesitated before speaking. I don't know if I'm ready for something like this, she admitted. Alicia leaned forward gently. I know that feeling, she said. The woman looked up. Really? Alicia smiled. Let me tell you a story. She paused. Then said the words that had once changed everything. Someone once asked me what I'd do with money I didn't have. The room grew quiet. Alicia's voice softened. And I told them I'd make sure it outlives me. Across the restaurant, Victor sat quietly at another table. Watching. Not interrupting. Not leading. Just observing. And for the first time in his life, he understood something clearly. This was legacy. Not buildings. Not billions. But impact. The waitress who once served him was now serving something far greater. Opportunity. Hope. A future. This story shows how one act of kindness can change everything. What's one way you could make a difference in someone's life today? Challenge yourself and share your commitment in the comments. 2 years later, the ripple that began with a single question had grown into something no one in that restaurant could have imagined. The pilot program was no longer a pilot. It had expanded into multiple cities. Dozens of small businesses had turned into thriving enterprises. Families who once lived paycheck to paycheck were now building savings. Young people who had never considered entrepreneurship were now mentoring others. And at the center of it all was Alicia Carter. No longer balancing trays. No longer blending into the background. But standing at the forefront of something bigger than herself. She had officially taken on a leadership role, Director of Community Investment Initiatives. A title she once would have thought impossible. But more important than the title was the work. Every decision she made carried the weight of her past. Every opportunity she created was intentional. Because she remembered what it felt like to be overlooked. What it meant to fight for every inch of progress. What it cost to survive. Marcus was in college now. Studying business. Not because it was expected of him, but because he had seen, firsthand, what it could do. "You built all this," he said to Alicia one evening as they walked past one of the program's first funded storefronts, a now busy bakery filled with customers. Alicia shook her head. "No," she said. "We built this." Because she had never forgotten. This was never about one person. It was about community. And Victor Hale. He was still a billionaire. Still powerful. Still respected. But no longer empty. His company had shifted its approach, slowly at first, then more boldly. Impact-driven investments became part of their strategy. Not as charity, but as smart, sustainable growth. The same board that once resisted Alicia's influence now referenced her models, cited her frameworks, respected her voice. Victor often found himself sitting in meetings, listening as others discussed ideas that had once been dismissed. And every now and then, he would smile. Not out of pride, but out of understanding. But perhaps the most powerful change wasn't in boardrooms, or reports, or titles. It was in moments. Small, quiet moments. Like the day Alicia received a letter from one of the program participants. It read, "Because of this opportunity, I was able to hire 3 people from my neighborhood. My daughter sees me differently now. She believes in something bigger. Thank you for seeing me when no one else did." Alicia held that letter for a long time. Because she knew that was the real return on investment. What started as a joke became a turning point. Not just for one man, not just for one woman, but for an entire community. Because kindness doesn't always look dramatic. It doesn't always come with recognition. Sometimes it starts with something as simple as listening. As simple as taking someone seriously. As simple as believing that potential can exist anywhere, even in places the world has overlooked. Victor Hale didn't change Alicia's life. He gave her a platform. And Alicia? She used that platform to change lives far beyond her own. That's the true power of kindness. It multiplies. It expands. It outlives us. Stories like this remind us that extraordinary kindness exists all around us. If this touched your heart, please like this video. It helps more people discover these inspiring stories. Subscribe for more tales of human kindness that will restore your faith in humanity. And most importantly, look for opportunities in your own life to be someone's unexpected blessing. What act of kindness will you perform this week? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching. And remember, you have the power to change someone's entire world.